Let me just record this. Okay, so what exactly does impromptu mean, and how are they different from ordinary decisions? So impromptu decisions have to be made usually on the spot, or sometimes you are given very little time to actually decide on something. One very practical example would be, for example, the oral examination, when they are supposed to talk about a certain situation or a certain topic. And sometimes they have many, many different thoughts in their minds. So they don't know, or they find it very difficult to make a decision about what to talk about, right? Or what would give them the best possible marks, or, help them to score well. So that's in the context of an examination. But of course, as we all know, when we enter adulthood or even in university or tertiary education, we have to make decisions quickly sometimes, or we are presented with question and answers during a presentation, and we have to actually respond on the spot. So many of us might find this difficult, right? And children sometimes also find this very difficult because sometimes they are not trained, or they do not have adequate practice in terms of responding or making decisions on the spot. So this is why I actually want to do this live stream, because I have witnessed in my teaching career all sorts of children from 6 all the way till 18 not being able to respond on the spot, or being very stumped when they are faced with a decision that they have to make. Okay, so just some background about why this is important. So I have a few props with me today to actually help me illustrate some of my points. And the first thing that I want to talk about is actually time. So as you can see here, I have a watch to symbolize time. And time is always of the essence, right? We are always rushing, or sometimes we feel, the urgency to do something and to maybe respond to something quickly. Otherwise, there'll be missed opportunities, or there might not be time to do other things. So we often pressure our children sometimes to quickly respond, right? Or say something, or give me an answer. And although the intention is good, we do want them to respond quickly so that, they can do other things, or, we can move on with whatever it is that we are doing. Sometimes this could be detrimental to children. And especially if they are quite introverted, some of them need a little bit more time and space to think before they actually respond. So whenever I do my teacher training, and whenever I present a case study of an introverted child, I always tell them to give the child some time and space, and to maybe come back to the child after they, have gone around, or they have tended to other children. And then they find that when they come back to the child has actually something prepared, or is, better equipped to answer the question, or to respond to a certain task that they have been set. So some time actually gives children space and confidence to be able to respond. So this is not wrong. In fact, I think normalizing asking for a bit more time has to be done, right? And of course, some of you might say, but in the exams, this is not possible. Time is ticking. They have to do it quickly. And yes, I agree. They don't have much time in the exams, especially if you talk about composition writing. They are expected to finish a whole entire story in 15 minutes, right? And that's not a lot of time. So the thing that I'm talking about here is not to delay or to procrastinate, because there's a difference, but maybe just taking a few minutes to gather one's thoughts. And that's very important, because if you just rush into something without putting any thought into it, or without gathering your thoughts and organizing your thoughts in your mind, usually your output would also not be very sensible, or your output may not be the best. So normalizing taking some time to respond, a few minutes, is okay. Now, one trick, or rather, one strategy that I've taught children to do during oral presentations when they are ask questions is actually to buy a little bit of time. Now, what do I mean by this? It's not flouting the rules, or, it's not something bad, but it is just informing the person who is asking you a question that you need a little bit of time to gather your thoughts. So how could this sound like? So for example, if someone asks you a question during a Q&A session, you can always say, please give me a moment to respond. And then, take some time to think about what you're going to say and then respond. Or you can say, thank you for the question. It is a good question. And now I'm going to respond to it. So you are actually giving them, an indication that you are going to answer the question. You just need a little bit more time. And this really, really helps because it calms the nerves of the person answering the question. And it also sends a signal to the audience or the person asking the question to not be so impatient. The question will be answered. It's just that the person answering the question needs a few minutes, and that's usually very acceptable. So this is something that I feel should be normalized. And even in your own conversations with your children, it is okay for you to tell them that they can ask for a little bit more time. It's just that it needs to be done, right? They need to know that they can't have all the time in the world. They can have a few minutes, they can have a few seconds to gather their thoughts, and then they would have to respond. Now, the other thing about responding, and especially this goes for, introverted children, I have found that sometimes they may not be able to respond using their words, using, verbal language. So we do, at ASA, we do give them the option of responding in other ways first. So for example, if we give them a writing task and we try to strike a conversation with them, or we ask them questions verbally, and we find that this is not the best approach because they may not be answering the questions, or they might just give you a blank face, right? We allow them to actually sketch their ideas, or we allow them to actually draw out things that they are thinking about, and then we strike a conversation with them. So this also helps them to have some time and then talk about their decisions or talk about their choices. And again, this, helps to build their confidence, because a lot of them are very introspective. Some of them are also very artistic. So they prefer to actually draw their thoughts rather than to straight away articulate them in words. So this is also very acceptable to me, because ultimately it will lead to a better outcome. So that's the first tip. So the first tip is, remember the watch. Asking for time or asking for a bit more time should be normalized. Okay, now the second tip actually has to do with something called the pre-mortem. So many of us would be familiar with the term post-mortem, right? Post-mortem is when something is done after. So for example, in a very gory sense, right, after someone has passed away, a post-mortem is done to usually find out the cause of death. But in academia, post-mortem is also used to talk about the analysis that is done after, a research has been carried out, or even after like a paper has been done, and then you do a post-mortem of it. So what went wrong? How can we do better the next time? So these are things done in a post-mortem. A pre-mortem is done before you even start on something. So before you even start on something, there is a way to actually analyze what could happen and what you are going to do. So this is not something, again, that we often do with our kids, maybe because we think that there is a lack of time. But when you do have the time, especially these days when the school holidays are approaching, you might want to do pre-mortems with your children. And it can be something as simple as getting out a piece of writing that they have done before, or something that they have always wanted to solve but never got a chance to do. And then you can carry out the pre-mortem with them. So what does this look like? I'm going to use another prop to illustrate how to do a pre-mortem. So I like to use Post-its whenever we are doing brainstorming in class, or whenever I want students to just write down their thoughts without, being too serious about it, or without, asking them to write a full essay. So they can actually just write their thoughts on Post-its, and then we stick them on the wall. And then everyone will be able to see all the ideas that have been written down by different students. So they learn from each other as well. So how does how do Post-its actually feature in pre-mortems? So the idea of a pre-mortem is to preempt what could go wrong, right? So for example, if a child is making a decision on maybe which secondary school he or she would like to attend, and different secondary schools have different, benefits or advantages, and even the parents are, trying to make a decision within a short amount of time, or whether or not to apply for DSA. Nowadays, DSA is very important. And sometimes what makes children and even adults very hesitant is what could go wrong. So if you do a pre-mortem, you will actually be more at ease. Let me explain. So if you have a decision you have to make, you can write out the decision that you have to make. And on each Post-it, you actually write down what could go wrong. So maybe you can use like a one color Post-it, you can use pink, or you can use blue, whatever color you choose. You can write down on each Post-it something that could go wrong, or a con, right? Not a pro, but a con. And then you just paste it on a wall, or you paste it on a piece of paper where everyone can see it. And then for each thing that could go wrong, you actually have another color Post-it, and you brainstorm how to overcome that, or how to prevent that from happening. So when you do this and you see the two side by side, it actually gives you more peace of mind, because you know that, yes, these are the things that could possibly go wrong with this decision that I have to make. But these are also the things that I can do to prevent that from happening, or, to solve the problem when it happens. So I find that this actually helps a lot to calm the nerves of the people making the decisions, and also to talk through, different solutions to problems that you might encounter. So consider doing this, and writing on Post-its is always fun for children, right? So they can write in different colors as well, and you can post it on a wall where everyone can see it. Okay, so the next one is actually a GPS. Now let me just turn on my GPS. All right, so many of us would have used this when we are driving, or when we are trying to navigate a certain place on the road that we are unfamiliar with. Excuse me. So why is this important, or why is this a good symbol for what we are talking about? Now, when kids make decisions, it's usually about navigating through uncertainty, right? Or when we make decisions as well for our children, it is about navigating through uncertainty and uncertain paths, because we don't know what lies ahead. So we are always quite fearful or apprehensive that maybe our decision might lead to the wrong path. And again, this can hinder many kids from making a right decision, because they think, oh, if I make this wrong decision, that's it. My future is going to be screwed up, or my future is gone, right? There's no more hope for me. So we put a lot of weight on wrong decisions, or we put a lot of weight because we think that the stakes are very high. But if we view life as a kind of, a GPS, then we know that whatever decision we make, there's always a way to go back, and there's always a way to actually reroute ourselves. So just like if we use a GPS and we get lost along the way, we can actually always reroute, right? But if we don't have this mindset, then every decision that your child has to make is going to hold so much weight that it's going to cause a lot of stress as well. So knowing when to make a decision, and then knowing when to pull out if the decision is a wrong one, or it's not the most favorable one, is also very, very important. So there are two things here, right? It's making the decision, but knowing that you can actually turn back around if the decision is not the best one for you. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. I was actually interviewing candidates to teach at ASA, and I had an interesting candidate who pursued engineering in the university, and then she pulled out after her second year. So usually the engineering course is about 3 to 4 years. She pulled out halfway in her second year, and now she's actually pursuing political science, and she's more involved in the art stream as opposed to engineering. So when I interviewed her, I asked her why did she choose to change her major? Why did she choose to change the course of her academics in the middle, right? After having already gone through 2 years. And her reply was actually very honest. And I thought that it was also quite brave. So she just said that, after 2 years of doing engineering, she knew that it wasn't the best path for her, and she will not be fulfilled if she continues and if she pursues a career in engineering. So rather than to finish the degree, she actually changed her mind and she started to pursue another degree. And these actually open up a lot of opportunities for her. So for example, she's going to do a course at Harvard that is tied to her current degree about political science. And she's a lot more passionate about it as well because she's very strong in languages and the arts. So some of you might think as well, right? After 2 years, you've already spent so much money and you are going to pursue something else. But imagine if she had completed the entire degree and then she went into the workforce and she decided that, this is not for me, then more time would have been wasted, right? And she would also have spent many years doing something that she's not happy with, or that she doesn't find meaningful. So sometimes it is not just about the short term that we have to think about, it's also about the long term. So while it's okay to go into certain fields or choose certain subject combinations, especially for those, for example, in junior college where you have to choose your subject combinations, it's fine to choose something, but then also know when to take a step back and change your mind if you feel that it is not the right choice for you. All right, so this is something that I guess we also have to change our mindset about. So that's the third point that I have. And the last one, okay, so the last one, I actually have this on a poster. Practice, practice, practice. So it might be a bit confusing because you are saying, how can you practice making impromptu decisions because you don't know what you need to make a decision about, right? Usually you are not very sure what might come up. Even like in a presentation, you don't know what questions someone might ask you. But actually there is a way to do it, and that is to continuously practice making decisions on an impromptu basis every day or frequently, so that it again takes the pressure when you actually have to do it for a serious thing. So for me, I think that making it fun for your children will actually help them to ease the pressure of them making, a wrong decision or thinking that they don't know what to do when it comes up. So one example I can think of, if you haven't gone to the ice cream museum, you should try to make a trip to it this holidays. It's quite interesting. And they have different types of ice cream flavors. So some of the ice cream flavors you might not have even heard of, or you might not have even tried before, right? But if you go into an ice cream museum, you can then ask your child to make an impromptu decision. Okay, so which one would you choose if you have a choice? And then ask the child to actually explain why the decision was made. So for example, if the child chooses, I don't know, maybe strawberry lychee flavor as opposed to banana, right? For example, why is it that she or he would choose that ice cream flavor? So it can start out very small, very light, and then gradually you build the child's confidence to actually do this on other matters, like even family matters, like where are you going to choose to dine out now that you can dine out as a family of 5, right? And you give the child more and more responsibility. And when the child sees that, okay, I have made a decision and it didn't turn out so bad, right? Nothing bad happened. And we still, everyone is still happy, everyone is still surviving, and there's no judgment or criticism, then there will be more confidence when the child actually has to make, more difficult decisions in the future. So there is a way to practice, and you can always preempt questions as well. So one of the things that we do during our holiday programs, whenever we prepare children for presentations, we don't let them just go in blind. We usually have a rehearsal round before the actual presentation, and they present to their friends first. And the friends will ask them questions, so that when it comes to the real presentation, where they are presenting in front of a small audience of parents and teachers, or if they are being recorded for a presentation, they would have already gone through one round of the presentation. So preempting questions has to be part of, your child's preparation to make impromptu decisions, because if someone were to question them, they would know how they are going to answer. So this helps a lot in oral preparation as well. So although you may not know what topic may come out for oral, you can always, preempt questions about different topics, different everyday topics. Like, for example, choosing to go for an event, or maybe buying the latest gadget, right? What are some of the questions that can arise from, talking about situation like that? And that helps, again, the child to build confidence and to, feel at ease and comfortable whenever he or she is presented with these impromptu questions. So I hope you found that useful. So just to recap, we have the 4 different symbols, or the 4 different points. The first one is asking for a bit more time. And the second one is pre-mortem, right? Using Post-its to actually think about what could go wrong and how to solve the problem. And the third one is when we use a GPS, right? So you can remember life being like a GPS and being rerouted, or there always is a way out of something. And the last one is practice, 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 where we can actually preempt questions or practice making decisions on the spot, and knowing that, it's not harmful, or it's not going to end up in disaster. Okay, so if you found this useful and you like your child to start doing this during the holidays in a structured way, we have 2 possible holiday programs that they can attend. The first one is actually our toy makers workshop. So they'll be making an educational toy. So they have to make decisions about what toy they want to actually bring into the world and, to present to others. And the second one is actually our You Go Girl program. So our You Go Girl program is running for the 3rd time already this year, and it's going to be face-to-face. We are going to help children make better decisions when it comes to facing dilemmas that they might face in their everyday lives, and also how to make better financial decisions. So although they are still young, it's never too early to actually expose them to things like savings and investment. So we are bringing in a special counselor as well as a financial advisor to talk to them about these things, and also to give them frameworks of how they can make better decisions in their lives. All right, so that's it for me for today, and I will hopefully see you next week. Take care and have a good weekend ahead. Bye.